Exhibition. Our wonderful juror, Elizabeth Cross, had to look through 470 works of art from artists within a 200-mile radius of Salem. And from those works, she chose 88 that are represented and 49 artists. So Dr. Elizabeth Cross, our juror, is a poet, as well as a senior fellow at George Mason University Center for the Advancement of Well-Being and Education consultant. She has designed art and writing programs with the Art Institute of Chicago, the National Gallery of Art, and the National Portrait Gallery for the public, teachers, businesses, and at-risk youth and medical schools. Her awards and grants for her work include the Michigan Council for the Arts, the Gertrude Stein Award for Innovative Writers, and the Rocky Mountain Women's Institute. So please join me in welcoming Liz Cross.
So hello, and thank you for coming out on this cold evening. And I want to extend an invitation to the artists that are here that are in this show. If you would please find time, if we can, to introduce yourself to me. I did the jurying blind. I don't know who you are, and I would really, really like to meet you. So even if we don't have time to have a conversation, which I hope we do, please do introduce yourself. You made this possible. It's an extraordinary collection. It was a remarkable experience. And I hope you will agree, it's pretty amazing just to be in a space with these works talking to each other. I want to thank Talia and Lacey for thinking it would be valuable to have a poet juror for their very important biennial show. For while I've spent many years working with artists and museums, I cannot paint or sculpt or make a pot. And I do write things by hand. And while quite capable of technical assessments, I worked for 10 years at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and worked as a consultant for the museum, designing and programming with their galleries. Poets tend to judge, or at least articulate their judgment in a different way. Emily Dickinson said, "If I read a book and it makes my body so cold that I can never warm myself again, I know that is poetry." So that's what you're about to get. So as an outsider looking in, fascinated, I appreciate their trust in me to do this work. In many ways, though, that's the role of artists too, to be outside the world, standing apart, and yet fascinated and paying very careful attention. It's part of the work that we both do. When I lived in Chicago and rode the train in to teach at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, it was usually obvious when one of the artists got on the train. They paid attention, sometimes uncomfortably, so maybe a little too intensely staring at someone's hands or nose. But paying the kind of attention you can only pay if you do not think of yourself as an insider, because how else could you notice the obvious and necessary and turn it into something we can all see? I don't mean to say that artists cannot do this judging for each other. Instead, what I want to say is that in the times that we currently find ourselves in, this thing that we do, stand slightly apart and observing the world, matters very much. I think it matters that we are fascinated and find a way to do that work and to not turn away. This is the first year that the gallery has been able to take digital submissions. Talia tells me that that's made a difference in opening up submissions to a wider range of artists. I don't know about that part. What I can tell you, though, was that the process of choosing the work for this show was actually kind of thrilling. I hope this won't offend you, but I kept wondering to myself, what the hell's in the water over there? There was just so much good work submitted that it was impossible to feel jaded about the state of art in this country while going through the submissions. And as you look around the gallery, I hope you will feel the same delight that I did in seeing so much good and varied work on the walls and floor. We have a remarkable cross-section of the community here. We have professional artists and professors, but we also have a high school student and at least one college student, at least one undergrad in the show. We have a wide range of styles as well, from highly technical photorealistic work to deeply layered abstraction and the conceptually satiric. Seeing this work here together in conversation for the last 2 days, I've spent the last 2 days primarily here in these galleries, has been deeply satisfying. Choosing the winner of this year's biennial was much more challenging. The pieces I eventually chose were ones that were not only technically advanced, but that also showed me the world differently and held my gaze long enough so that my eye was fascinated, had trouble turning away, and so stayed long enough to change how I might see and how I might think and feel. Emily Dickinson said, "I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose." This possibility, this opening of new potential, is what I found in plenitude in our winners. So let's do that. Oh, I need this because my pronunciation. So I gotta say the words right. Okay, great. So how do we do this? Do I just call them out and they come up?
Yes.
It's like a beauty pageant. Wow, poets don't get to do this. Oh, this is so fantastic. Okay, so honorable mention. Do they get a sash and a? Sorry. So we're going to have 3 honorable mentions, and we'll do 3, 2, 1. So honorable mention for Reversible Journeys 1, Mr. Andrew Franklin. Our next honorable mention is Quebaiko, am I saying this right? Silver, Dwayne Kreger. It's Dwayne here. Thank you. Okay, and our third honorable mention. I really did have a hard time making these decisions. We have A Few Good Men by Virginia Derryberry. Okay, so our third place award, OM 16, William Wiley. And challenging my pronunciation abilities. We have second place, Anaquilos Tiempos by Federico Kate Laquetal. Am I close?
That
was good. So for our first place, we have Landscape Intervention Painted Desert, Robert Sulkin. So please enjoy the food, enjoy the art, and talk to each other as much as possible. Thank you.